candidates. First, I want to say thank you to everybody who's here, both in person as well as the candidates who have taken the time to show up and to be here to meet you guys. I'm going to start off with Katie Ballas-Tracy, who is the she is the chair of the current Board of Education here in Guilford. So, Katie.
Yes, of course we can. Okay. Hi, everyone. So nice to see you all on screen and in the room. I am the chair of the Board of Education. I am not up for re-election this year, but I am certainly very, very invested in the outcome of this election. And I really want to thank all of you for your interest, for your engagement, for the things that you're doing to really help support the candidates that are here with us today and then are running on rows A and C. I was asked to just give a few comments about the composition of the board, the role of the Board of Ed, and so I am going to do that, and I will certainly take any cue from Carol if there are things that I haven't addressed that would be helpful for you to hear. Forgive me if some of it may seem basic, although I have, as I've done some door knocking and talked to some of our voters, that sometimes a lot of what the board does is not well known. So the Board of Education in Guilford is a 9-person board. We are elected every 2 years. So there is, each of us is on a 4-year term, but each of us, there's a staggered approach to elections, which really helps with consistency of Board of Ed functioning throughout. We do have in Guilford, and it's a function of our Guilford charter, a bare majority rule for our boards. What that means is that no one political party can occupy more seats than one of the majority. What that's meant in the current board is that we have 5 Democrats and 4 Republican members of our board. The majority rule does not dictate the makeup of the members that are not in the majority. So it could be independent, it could be Republican. If another party has the majority, it could be Democrat, but the majority party can only have 5 members. And that's important in an election because it means it's why we're so intent on making sure that when voters walk into the voting booth, they understand, at least in this election, that that we're asking them to vote for 2 Democrats and 3 folks on the independent line, because we already have 3 sitting members in the Democratic Party on the board. So there's a limit to how many additional members in the Democratic Party we could possibly add. Very briefly, the role of the board. The board has a really important role. I'm not sure it's always well understood. We are actually agents of the state. We are guided by state law, state regulation, state statute. We are largely a policy-making group of individuals. So one of our most important roles is to make policy, maintain policy, review and update policy that supports the education provided in our schools. Another really important role for us is the hiring and ongoing evaluation of our superintendent. We hire that individual to essentially be the CEO of our schools. That role is really important because there is a differentiation between our work in making policy, in maintaining policy, in kind of supporting and evaluating the superintendent, and in the day-to-day operations of the Board of Ed, of the school system, which are really the responsibility of the superintendent, right? We are not a body that specifically makes curriculum. We are a body that reviews curriculum, participates on curriculum committees, that are made up of principals and literacy coaches and faculty and parents. But the responsibility of running the school system really lies with the superintendent. And I think I think that gets lost a little bit. And in some of the communication I'm hearing around this election, that's really an important distinction. The other thing we have is a really important role with the community. Almost all of our work is done in public. There are very narrowly defined times at which we can do any business in what's called executive session. An example of that might be a contract negotiation. But most of our work is done in public, and that is because, in fact, we are elected officials in Guilford and really trying to do the work for the town and your public school system. We meet twice a month in regular Board of Ed meetings. We have 3 subcommittees that do more focused work. We have a policy committee, which again, I'll underscore is a really important role for us. We have an operations committee in which we review budget on a monthly basis. We review expenditures. We review facility needs. We get updates on our medical accounts. We get updates on special services funding for our kids who have particular educational needs, because that's always a fairly large budget expenditure. And we have a curriculum, instruction, and assessment committee, which allows the board to be more intricately informed on the types of instructional approaches, as well as curriculum content that is provided to our students. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to make sure I share with you just on the ABCs, but I'm going to turn to Carol. Carol, are there any questions or any particular topics you'd like me to talk on, or is it best to now move on to the candidates?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My inclination is, Nan has a question.
We can field a couple of questions before we then move, but
I don't know how political this is supposed to be getting as opposed to quiet, but in my reading and talking.
I'll repeat. Nan is speaking, so whatever she's about to say, one of us is going to try to repeat.
Okay, sorry. You mentioned that the orange charge hiring and reviewing the superintendent. So
Actually, Nan, just come up and say it to the mic, because these folks can't hear anything that you're saying. Sorry.
I just
Thank
wanted to point out for one of the things that is a big election issue is even though the superintendent is the one running it, is my understanding for a lot of the people who are agitated about this election and who wanted to replace the current board, is that the hiring of the superintendent was specifically one of the things that they're concerned about, so that it's not just what the board members are doing, it is the hiring decisions that many people are agitated about. I think our superintendent's great, but it's not, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I feel that the row B wants to get on there precisely to fire the superintendent. It's not even just what they would do on the board in their daily operation stuff. And I think you may have underplayed the role in hiring and firing as one of the big political issues in this campaign.
I can follow up also, just because I've heard a little bit about this. The Board of Ed is involved in the interview committees for our district leadership, principals, director of pupil services, et cetera. But the hiring of all employees in the district is ultimately the decision of our CEO or superintendent. So that's also an important piece of information. We are invited and active participants in interviewing. Candidates are brought to us when the finest candidate is identified by the superintendent. But it's really important that we understand that the role of the Board of Ed members is extremely important, but has a really distinct purpose from our superintendent. Excellent. I'm going to turn it over now to Carol. Anyone who ever has questions about how the Board of Ed functions should always feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to explain that to us, and we're happy for our community to understand what we do.
Tell them
So-
how to reach out.
Oh, yes, sorry. Each member of the Board of Ed has contact information on the Guilford Public Schools website. We have email addresses that people should reach out at any point, and then also coming to meetings. Our regular meetings, the second Monday of every month, has a public forum and a public question period in which people should feel free to come and ask questions or voice opinions.
At what
Thank you.
time and where?
And our first meeting of the month, which again is the second Monday of the month, unless there is a Monday holiday, which happens occasionally, is at the Guilford High School Media Center at 7:30 p.m.
Oh, it's in the morning?
No.
Oh, baby.
All right, thank you, Katie. As always, people can put questions into the chat and we'll bring them up later. We are on a bit of a time, as I said earlier, a time constraint. We've got, of course, the big wigs who, even though we are like totally the bomb over here, but those guys will draw somebody. Okay, so in order, I mean, are there any of the candidates who actually need to be out of here in the next couple of minutes? No, fine. So I'm going to start off with Noel Petra. Noel is an independent. Some of you may know of his wife. Noel is quite involved, I gather, with the Guilford Foundation as well. His wife is Liza Petra, who has done phenomenal work here in the town as well. Noel, I will let you know that Joni is standing back there to keep people at a 5-minute thing. So she'll give you a 1-minute notice and then a time's up.
That won't be a problem. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us here. It's really a pleasure to be here. So my name is Noel Petra. I've lived in Guilford for a very long time, I think 30 years now. Grew up in Stony Creek, and a few months ago, I was talking with my wife and she told me about what was happening with the school board. I went to social media. I started reading what's going on. I saw the website for the Truth in Education website, and you know, I can say I never envisioned myself running for any office ever. It just wasn't, it was always taken care of, right? Especially the Board of Ed. It was already like a good thing. I didn't have to worry about it. And at that moment, they were calling for independence. And, you know, it was one of those situations where, sorry, I'm having a hard day. You had to stand up. Somebody had to step forward and take care of it. And so I did. And I'm joined with this great group who, by the way, I consider now to be my new best friends. We've been spending a lot of time together, and I'm thrilled to be running with them. And so, you know, our job isn't to come in and we don't have a platform of change. We don't have a platform of we're going to do this and we're going to do that. I mean, what we're going to do is protect our existing great school system. We're going to protect our teachers. We're going to protect our administration, and we're also going to protect our superintendent, Paul, who's done a fabulous job. And I'm happy to do it. It's going to be an adventure. It already has been. So if you guys have any questions, we'll do that after. Thank you.
Do it now. Thanks, Noel.
Protect our schools, great, is the comment that popped up in the chat. Thank you. If you don't mind, this is apologies to the Democrats who are here, but I think the independents are just kind of this whole, kind of a new idea in Guilford. And so I'm going to ask you guys to speak next. So Christy, since you're sitting next to me, Christy Faulkner, again, it's because you guys are not as well known, and frankly, the people on the Board of Ed, your faces aren't well known. I will ask you to kind of remember to say your name somewhere in there so that people know this indeed is about to be Christy Faulkner. And I'm actually going to put it on speaker view so that, well, am I going to do that? Mostly, I just want the speaker to be attentive that you are within the frame of the camera. Okay, there. Okay, Christy Faulkner, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for zooming in. It's so great to be here and get a chance to see some supportive faces and just give you a chance to get to know a little bit about us. I'm a mother of 3 children currently enrolled in the Guilford school system. I have 2 at Adams in 7th and 8th and 1 at Guilford Lakes. We moved here in 2008 specifically for the wonderful school system. Our youngest actually has special needs, so when we went through the pre-K program with our peer mentoring older two, it was a very strange experience to come at it from the other side. But it was just like, we felt like we won the lottery, that we happened to pick this town that came with this incredible reputation, and the support we and our children have received throughout this process has been incredible, which is why, similar to Noel, when I learned from a good friend what was really unfolding in our town, what was happening, what was hanging in the balance with the outcome of that caucus this summer, I just felt so grateful that I knew there was something I could do to stand up and help. You know, we are 3 people here on the independent line, but we really are here to represent our community. There are so many people who have expressed their gratitude for what we're doing. And I just feel like it's such an honor to know that we're here for you and we're your voices. You know, and weighing the decision and what was involved in it and the ramifications for my family. I've recently returned to full-time work for the first time in over 13 years of being a stay-at-home mom. So I had a lot piled on my plate. I volunteer on numerous boards. I'm on the zoning board of appeals in town. I'm currently the co-chair of the Guilford Special Ed PTO. I've served on the Baldwin PTO, the Guilford Lakes PTO. I try very hard to serve our community at any opportunity I get. I feel like if I have a spare moment of time, it's to be given to others. And I've tried to instill that in my children. So back to the point of that rambling thing, it's just, I knew that there was a lot at stake here. I knew the nature of this election. I knew that it could be emotionally draining. I knew we were probably going to see and hear hard things that we knew to be untrue, but weren't really able to always defend. But I told my husband in the bottom of it all, it was just an easy decision because, you know, not many times in our lives are we presented with the opportunity to show our children what it is to stand up for what you believe in, even if it scares you. So I am here doing what scares me to protect our schools.
Thanks, Christy. I just have to put in a brief note. Yesterday, we got a call from our 32-year-old son, whose birthday is coming up, who said, I'm going to tell you what I want for my birthday. Okay, keep doing what you're doing because all the work that you and all of your friends are doing is changing the world for the better. So it's just that moment. No matter how old they are, it's a thank you. All right, and thank you for speaking and being here, of course. Jen Baldwin is up next. Jen, also on the independent line.
Hello, everybody. It's so nice to see faces in person as well as on Zoom. My name is Jennifer Baldwin. I grew up as a military brat. We moved all around the world. I spent some time in Germany. My father.
Tilt this up just a little. I'm getting instructions from the peanut gallery there.
My father was actually my custodial parent back in the 70s, which is a very rare thing. But his philosophy was take advantage of everywhere that you are. Learn the culture, learn about that community that you are in. And I have definitely taken that to heart. I try to instill that in my children as we go. And so we've been pretty involved with things around town. I moved here in 2003. My ex-husband grew up in Madison. And when we were looking for a house before we had kids, he said, absolutely not Madison. Guilford is so much better. And he could not have been more right and is actually regretting that he's living in Madison now. I am a lawyer. I have been a lawyer for 24 years. I currently work for the Public Defender's Office and have done that for 20 years. I'm out of New London right now. I think that that job in particular is going to make me a good candidate for the Board of Ed because nobody likes me there, right? My clients aren't happy, the prosecutors aren't happy, the judges aren't happy, but yet I have to somehow put all of that together to make everything work. A wise judge once said, if nobody walks away from the table unhappy, then you're not doing a good job. So I will take that to heart in doing this. I believe in listening and to all sides, students, parents, educators, just the community at large, people who don't even have children, especially when it comes to the budget, and helping explain that process and doing what's best for our community as a whole. I do have 2 children, one in the high school. She's a freshman and she is on the swim team, which is undefeated, which is fabulous. And my younger one is at Baldwin Middle School. I have also been involved in PTOs as well. I was the secretary at A.W. Cox. I helped create that position for about, I think it was 3 years. It may have been longer. I don't even know. And then I took over as secretary at the Baldwin PTO. I have also been involved heavily with the special ed PTO since its inception. I helped create the bylaws and run it. I was a representative and now I'm the secretary of that one. The reason I'm running is very much tied to the special ed. My son has special needs and has had an IEP, and I've been fighting for him since he was 2 years old. When I heard these candidates talk about, and really the Republicans talk about equity and inclusion as dirty words or nasty words, it hits me to my core. That's my son they're talking about. Equity and inclusion are the cornerstones, the legal standards for special ed. It started with civil rights. It moved on to the ADA, women's rights. I wouldn't be here right now, right? If there weren't women's rights, I wouldn't be a lawyer and being able to do all the things that I can do. So that was a gut punch to me, and I just can't have that. So that is one of the reasons I put my name in the ring and my hat in the ring and decided to run. But I would like to continue that work. The purpose of the Board of Ed is to make sure and ensure that all students have the appropriate education that they need. And if some need a little more help, and most of our children right now do with the mental health crisis that is going on in our community, then we need to do that. And so that is my hope, to continue the great work that the board has already started that process. And I want to keep that going for our kids. But thank you very much for listening tonight and on Zoom.
So I will say we've got a total of 24 people in attendance between here and there, which is actually pretty great because people are pretty zoomed out in general. All right, Arnold Schreda. Arnold Schreda, I have to tell you, has become a friend, and partly because many of you from CTSI recall those wonderful days when we were really dealing with the State Elections and Enforcement Commission and trying to figure out what was the lane that CTSI could be in. We can't endorse person, party, or referendum, and we had to fight for that, and there were hearings, and most people at our in-person meetings were just exhausted from hearing me talk about SEEK. Our advisory group was really exhausted from my saying, yeah, we can't do that. Yes, we can do this. No, we can't do that. It was Arnold, as in his role as an election lawyer, who really guided us through that process. So I have an incredible debt of gratitude to Arnold for helping us create what CTSI has become and for staying out of the SEEK crosshairs. Now, I know that's not the role you're in this particular moment, but I at least had to say that. So thank you. This is Arnold Schreda, and I will just ask you, be sure that you can see yourself. Thanks, Arnold.
Thank you, Carol, for those very kind words. And thank you to Shoreline Indivisible for everything that you do, whether you're here on Zoom or here in the crowd. The activities that you all carry out in a nonpartisan manner that promotes and protects democracy is really what makes your group so important. So much applause to all of you. So a little bit about myself. I grew up more or less, spent my formative years in Brantford, Connecticut, all the way over to the west of us. Got my undergrad, my bachelor's at University of Massachusetts Amherst, spent some time down in DC working Democratic politics, and then I attended law school at the University of San Francisco. So obviously I've lived a few places. After law school, I went back to DC and started working at the Democratic National Committee, where I eventually became their Deputy Chief Operating Officer during President Obama's reelect. So he had his office in Chicago. That was the primary campaign office, but the DNC was really working as collaboratively as part of his overall campaign organization. So in that process, obviously, that was the first $1 billion plus national campaign. So to put it simply, we had a lot of offices and a lot of staff throughout the nation. They also worked on a lot of real innovative technological programs for voter contact, and they really opened the world up to what we now consider digital media, which is the whole online presence, as well as data, where we reach out to voters in a very particular way, and we're able to figure out who we need to talk to. So that was a big part of my past. I also served as counsel to the state party. I'm now currently in private practice, and I'll continue to work with the Connecticut Democratic Party. The way that I ended up back here was when my wife and I were finally ready to settle down, we said, where do we want to live? Because we were ready to start a family. I always knew that I wanted to end back up on the shoreline. So without even any hesitation, I said, let's check out Guilford. So we went house shopping, basically, found a good home at the right price. And I kept telling my wife, we're not just buying a home, we're getting access to the community and to the schools. So the way that I ended up running for Board of Ed is, first of all, I had expressed some interest 4 years ago. As everything worked out, it turned out I was better suited for a different role at that point. So I started out on the Board of Assessment Appeals, which is also an elected position. I've been on that board for 4 years, working very collaboratively with the other side of the aisle. And then this year, the Democratic nomination came up. There was a vacancy. I immediately expressed interest. My twin daughters, who are 5 years old, they just started kindergarten. So I thought, great, this is my opportunity to kind of help shepherd the school system, you know, purely self-interest as my daughters go through the process. So I, for the most part, thought it was going to be a pretty inconsequential, if not pedestrian race. We had an inclination, there was some stuff going on the other side. Then they went through their endorsement after ours, and it was a big red flag. Whoa, look at what just happened. Then we start noticing, oh, it's actually part of a larger national trend. So then our opponents go through their primary, and at that point, it was basically like game's on. It has completely galvanized the two sides. Frankly, I'm scared for our country and for what our opponents could mean for our country, much less the Republican Party. So without getting too much into that, because I know that you are a nonpartisan organization, the reason I'm running truly is to continue to protect and promote the school system as it is. The school system is exemplary. The superintendent works collaboratively with the board. The board, up until this point, has been almost completely apolitical. You wouldn't know which party any of the members are from. I know that that's how we would work together, and I hope that we all have that opportunity. The curriculum issue is obviously huge. My marriage and my family is mixed race, and our opponents forget that every time they want to disregard the equity and social justice program, they're wanting to disregard one of our kids. So we hope that we have your support. We thank you for hosting us, and go fight win.
Thank you. Thank you, Arnold. Absolutely. So yes, our group is devotedly, yes, sure. Our group is devotedly progressive candidates for sure. And absolutely, I mean, our values are out there everywhere that we have everything about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Absolutely. You guys can be as partisan as you need to be, as you of all people know. Anyway, okay. Sorry to keep you waiting last, my dear, but what an amazing candidate. This is Moira Raider. You are currently on the Board of Ed, I think, and so is running for re-election. I will say to you also to please just be sure that you're in the frame of the picture.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you, Moira.
Good morning, everybody online and everyone here. Thank you, Carol and Shoreline Indivisible, for having us. This is a really great opportunity to really talk about the board from a mechanics point of view, but also to introduce all of us. As Carol mentioned, my name is Moira Raider. I have served on the Board of Ed for the last 4 years. I'm a Democrat. And I am really, really proud of what we've done over the last 4 years. I came to the board after working on PTOs. I actually served on AW Cox PTO with Jen for several years. I was the assistant treasurer, then the treasurer, and kind of lost track of how many years I was on it as well, but it was important to me. My kids were in the school. I've also served at my church community as a volunteer teacher and other organizations in town. It's always been very important to my husband and I to give back to a community, especially one like Guilford. We came here over 8 years ago. Specifically, we were returning to Connecticut from being out of state, and we specifically chose Guilford because we loved the community energy and like you see, the progressive, more open-minded energy and vibe of the community. We knew our kids would be exposed to a lot of really great opportunities. We knew how great the schools were. So it was kind of a no-brainer decision for us. And it has far exceeded our expectations. So from that and getting involved with the community, my husband actually serves on the standing building committee for the last 7.5 years. A good dear friend, Christine Cohen, who is now our senator, was serving on the Board of Ed, and there was an opening, and she said to me, "You'd be really great at this. I really want you to consider it." And I had been going to Board of Ed meetings because at that time we were advocating for full day kindergarten. And it was my first foray into speaking at BOE meetings and advocating for it. And I started to see how the board worked and how nonpartisan it really, truly was. And so when she asked me, I said, you know what, I will consider it because I don't see any politics in it. Fast forward 4 years, it's a little different. But I want to really reemphasize what Katie said and the other folks here said about this board is that we really have always worked in a really wonderfully collaborative manner. You really can't tell from sitting in the audience what party we represent. And that's how you create a really highly functioning, respectable board and create trust with your community. And that's something I really hold of great value is that the community trusts us. And so really what is at stake in this election, among many other things, is continuing that trust and that open communication between the community and us as a board. I don't want that threatened. In terms of what we've been able to accomplish over the last years of my term on the board, I'm pretty proud of the collaboration and the work we've done. We were hit with a global pandemic and nobody had a guidebook for how to manage that or how to navigate that. And I feel as a district, we really served our students and our faculty and our community very well in navigating that and making everyone feel safe, health, on a physical level, but also on a mental health level. When we brought our kids back, that was the priority. Let's make sure their mental health and wellness is at the priority. And I'm seeing that play out. I have 4 children, 3 are still in the district. And really what I've seen this district do is incredible in terms of bringing the kids back, obviously maintaining the rigorous curriculum and instruction that we have, but always making sure that they are mentally well and supported. And I really worry about that being put aside over this argument of equity, inclusion, and diversity. Inclusion means taking a child where they are for who they are and supporting them. It can be about race, it can be about religion, it can be about gender identity, sexual identity, whatever their identity is. And that's at stake right now. The other side wants to quiet that and pretend that that doesn't exist and that's not relevant. But that's the most relevant thing when we're talking about our school systems is our children and making them feel included and supported. So as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this. I'm thrilled to have these 4 wonderful people running with me. I know they're all going to bring amazing things to this board. I said to someone just the other day, I'm so excited to get to work with them. We've done an amazing job of the last 4 years on the board, and I'm sad to see some folks go, but I understand why it played out. And we all know why it played out and what's happening nationally. But I really hope that you can spread the word of support for us. We have a wonderful community. We have an outstanding school district. But if our school district suffers or is harmed, it will ripple out to everything in our community. So I just thank you for your support, and I hope you will all continue to support us and stay involved and engaged, because one silver lining of all of this is how much community engagement this has created. We sometimes had board meetings where we have 3 or 4 people in the audience. They're now full. and they're largely full supporters. So I hope that that continues and continues to grow in our community. So thanks for listening, and
Thanks so much.
go fight win.
Thank you. What a phenomenal group. It is so great to meet all of you and to get to hear you speak a little bit. I do have one question that it's probably to any of the current sitting board members. We can certainly, after this election is done, we can certainly keep letters to the editor campaign happening of saying, thank you so much for stepping up to run. This is why these people ran. This is what it means to be community involved. And to your point, this is really what's at stake. Right, and the importance of staying involved, which of course is what Shoreline Indivisible tends to do a lot of. How much of a problem has it been? Have you guys been threatened at the board meetings? I mean, are you requiring police presence there? Are you requiring security at the meetings? I mean, how much energy, violent energy, has the opponents kind of ginned up to create a threat actually at the meetings, or to you guys personally? I know, Katie, you were getting a bunch of hate mail that was happening. But how much is that actually happening here in town? And any of you guys can answer that. Oh, and then there's another question. Sorry. Okay. And okay, we have a couple of questions after that one, but you can just see it there. What percentage of the town budget is the Board of Ed? But there you go. A couple of questions there.
Sure. Happy to. I think we have been lucky. I think we have seen across this country some really problematic interactions at Board of Ed meetings, threatening interactions, et cetera. We have not experienced that. We've certainly had some folks come to Board of Ed meetings and feeling very angry. And I, as the chair, at times had to really remind folks about the rules around public forum, about the rules about the things that can be brought to a Board of Ed meeting, et cetera. But we are aware as Board of Ed members that this is going on nationally, and so it is. It can be an anxiety-ridden experience, right? I have to say I'm involved in the Board of Ed for a number of reasons. One of them is that I love being involved in my community in this way. I've really enjoyed everyone. I say that sincerely. Everyone in my 10 years that I've worked with on the board, people bring important different perspectives, but it's always been a respectful and collaborative and thoughtful experience. And certainly, I hope that continues. I wouldn't say I've gotten hate mail. I'm grateful that hasn't really happened to any extent, certainly from members of our community. But we have folks that are feeling very angry and haven't always wanted to hear or believe the explanations that we provide in terms of what we are trying to do on the board and in terms of what Guilford Public Schools is trying to do. So, so that's been a challenge, honestly. You had another question, budget. The Board of Education is approximately 2/3 of the town budget, right? So we in Guilford, and it doesn't happen this way in every town, but we vote on a combined budget every year. And so the Board of Ed is approximately 2/3 of the budget, and the specific town budget is approximately 1/3.
Thank you. I've got to look to see if there are other questions. Moira says the Board of Ed has never been partisan or political. Republicans, I'm just reading because now people are kind of putting forward game on. Arnold's going to protect our schools. That's game on. Jen believes in listening. Students and parents, I'll just tell you what is happening in the chat here. Jen believes in listening. Students, parents, educators, taxpayers without kids in the school system. Absolutely. Called to service and honored to serve in the community. Equity, inclusion are the cornerstones of special ed. I can see Charlie's still writing, so this is going to keep going. Let's see, inclusion. Okay. Ginny, please.
I wonder if some of you could respond to, how do you respond to parents who say, we don't want our child to know that history? we don't want to have diversity being a topic of discussion in the curriculum. How do you respond to that?
Could Zoom hear that okay? You guys could all hear the question? Oh, excellent. Whoever wants to field that question.
I'll jump out. It's not an easy answer because as Katie inferred, sometimes we always listen, but we're not always going to give parents or community members the answer they want. This is really important work. And yes, we've had pushback. It's a minority voice, but that's what the other side is arguing, that we don't need that work in our district. But how can you offer a public education if you're not protecting the rights of every student? So how are you not protecting their diverse background? How are you not making sure that they have an equitable access to their education? As Jen inferred with special ed, that's legally required. So how can you silence those offerings in your district and not provide a public school education? I was thinking about this the other day. I was talking to my daughter, who's a junior, and she's obviously a huge supporter of all of this work and sees it play out at the high school level, where a lot of children start to explore their identities and explore their ethnicities and try to find their comfort zone in a very awkward time in their life. And she said, "Mom, this is so important. Please don't let this go away." She goes, "I've seen how it's changed even when I was in elementary school to now." And to those parents that don't agree with it, we hear them, we hear their perspective, but I, as a board member, could never say to them, "We can't do this work." And as Katie said, we represent from the state level, filtered down to us, the expectations of the district. And this is an initiative that is largely part of any curriculum and instruction. You can't parse out talking about hard history, or you can't parse out even a music lesson, teaching children an African hymn. And why wouldn't you? So it's a difficult dynamic, and it's one we've been pushed up against. But I think if we just continue to do the work and show the benefit, Arnold often says it's an add to what we already do in the district. We're not taking something away to replace it with work on diversity, equity, inclusion, and lessons on social justice. So therefore, the argument, I don't see as an argument. I see it's them getting more comfortable with it and trying to reach out to those parents that don't understand why we're doing it or push against it, and helping them, as Jen says, realize they're not dirty words, they're not scary words, and maybe bringing them into it. Because really, after this is all over, that's what we're going to have to do, right? That's not going to go away. So to think the election will shut that argument down or shut that pushback down is naive. So my hope, and it might sound a little Pollyanna, is to capture a lot of those parents that are uncomfortable with it and bring them to a place of comfort with it. There's there was a post where someone took video of me in a meeting from back in January and kind of tried to twist my words around about this very question to infer that I didn't want parent engagement. And that is the last and least true thing you could say about that conversation, because the students are our priority, and therefore the families in the community are a priority as well. So I hope that helps answer that.
Thank you, and I certainly know this isn't going to go away.